Hello and welcome to today's episode of Health University, where we talk all things women's reproductive health and with a particular focus on fertility. Today, I have the good fortune of introducing to you Heather Kampf. Heather is a new friend and colleague that we met through our shared group called Matrikas, and Sally was on another podcast, so go look for that if you want to learn more about Matrikas. But Heather's going to talk to us today about the importance, the value of incorporating yoga into your preconception or prenatal care. And I'm really interested in having this conversation because yoga can seem rather esoteric. So it would be lovely to really drill down a little bit, Heather, and find out a little bit more about your thoughts on how it can enhance a conception journey, a pregnancy journey, a postpartum journey. But first, let me take a minute and read your bio, if I may.
Yes, please.
Heather Kemp's compassionate teaching style inspires her students to believe in themselves. She loves the combination of vinyasa flow blended with focused alignment that creates a moving meditation. I love that. Honoring the lineages of the Iyengar and Ashtanga systems. A devoted mother of two, Heather understands deeply that a yoga practice, including meditation and pranayama, and we'll want to learn what that is, will offer a steady source of strength that is beneficial on and off the mat. She offers these tools to empower her students as she provides a space for them to move deeper into their own inner wisdom. Again, love that. We need that with this conversation. Heather's vision of cultivating interconnection as well as community infuses her teaching with an optimism that uplifts her students. So welcome, Heather. If I missed anything, please do elaborate.
I think you got it all there.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm delighted to have you here. I think that, as I said, yoga can be one of these fields of study that is kind of mistaken for an exercise program. So I'd love to have you. I'm just going to give you the floor, if you will, before we, have a back and forth exchange of questions. Tell us what yoga means to you, what it could mean to someone on a fertility journey.
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. It is interesting. I do think yoga is very, very often misconstrued or miscategorized by people who don't pursue the practice. It is often thought of as just an exercise regime for flexible people, or I just took my daughter to a college program and we were doing the college tour, and one of the students mentioned that one of the classes available to complete the students' religion requirement that they have to take is yoga. That's one of the classes. And I was like, okay, it's not a religion, but it is a spiritual practice, but that is very separate because, of course, yoga, there are practitioners from probably every faith. Certainly within my own community, I know Buddhist yogis. I was raised Christian. I know Jewish yogis. So it's not a religion per se. And to speak to the physical aspect of it, there is really no one who couldn't do yoga. Yoga has been modified for all sorts of disabilities or injuries. So it's not an exercise program for people, which is the big myth I always try to dispel. But it is bringing us into our physical body, however that is on any given day. And it changes, right? It's, we're not going to, especially in pregnancy. I always say to my pregnant students that, how do you feel today? Because no 2 days are the same. So what separates yoga from other fitness is the connection of every movement with a style of breathing. And that is what pranayama is.
Pranayama is a style of breathing. Okay, I want to just...
Yeah, different techniques. There are different ways of breathing. There is a general pranayama called ujjayi that is the breath practice, the general go-to breath practice for an asana practice. Asana is anytime you're doing any of the poses. That's referred to as the asana practice. And It is only one of the eight limbs of yoga. The physical postures are only one of the eight limbs.
Mm,
So that's why I do try to have people understand why it's so much more than just an exercise program.
mhm,
And yes, you can lose weight, and yes, you can become more flexible. Like those things can happen,
mhm,
but it's not the goal of yoga. The goal of yoga is, well, the word yoga, I can say, means unity.
mhm,
So we are seeking a union between the body and the breath, the body and the mind, um, on a larger scale, ourselves and everything else.
mhm,
So, you
mhm.
know, specifically to bring it back down to something a little more tangible for someone pursuing fertility, this is an a time riddled with anxiety and a time riddled with questioning of their own body. Why isn't my body working the way it should? And when we ostracize our bodies for whatever the thing we think it's not doing right, then we are creating energetic and emotional blocks
Mhm.
that will inhibit the natural flow of what we call in yoga, we call it prana. It's life force, right?
Right.
And
We call
that's what
it
we,
chi in Chinese medicine.
of
Yes.
course,
Mhm.
it's not a thing specific to yoga. It's everywhere. It's just what you call it. So yeah, qi in Chinese medicine.
Mhm.
Um, and that's what we're dealing with, right? In fertility, right? We want prana to be able to flow.
Yes.
So something else I always try to explain to anyone who's maybe on that fertility journey is not every yoga class is going to be the right one for you at this time.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Please,
You're
please say
not going to want to
more.
be looking for a power yoga class.
Thank you. I was going to say, please say more about that because I do have patients come in my door in my private practice, and they are committed to doing hot yoga
Mm.
for for 2 hours at a stretch, and they're they're small and petite and frail and dry skin and all of that, and I think, oh goodness. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that this might not be your best yoga. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And it's interesting. Well, if they're on the fertility journey, they're not pregnant yet, then, we can't really tell them they can't go to the hot yoga class.
Right, right.
But it's interesting. I've had there is a hot room at the studio that I teach at,
Mhm,
and it's very popular because it's infrared heat as
mhm,
opposed to just like a Bikram class where they just crank
mhm,
the thermostat.
mhm,
And the infrared heat is very nurturing. It's very therapeutic and healing. I personally do love it.
mhm,
Um, but I've had prenatal students ask me if they can go because one of the classes there is a yin class. So they're like, oh, that sounds like it would feel great. And I'm like, yeah, but you really don't want to be in the heat. You're already your body if you're currently pregnant, you really don't want to be in that
absolutely.
heat. And I
And if
did
there's a
have
chance you're pregnant, so if you've tried to conceive in a given month and it's post-ovulation, that's not the
yeah.
time for you to be in that, heat, whether it be just cranking up the thermostat or infrared for that matter.
Right, because you're incubating your baby
Yeah.
and specifically infrared heat, one of the benefits is that as opposed to an external heat that just like warms our skin and makes us sweaty, the
Mhm,
infrared does penetrate deeply.
mhm.
So you don't want to do that to
Right,
your unborn child.
right. Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
the thing is, there's a lot about, I think, around women's health and pregnancy and fertility, all this so not understood. So, not only do the pregnant women not know whether or not they should be going to those classes, the teachers don't know to tell them to leave.
Mm.
And I've been really wrestling with this, particularly myself, because there is a teacher where I teach who mentioned at a meeting that pregnant students come to his class, and his class is an infrared vinyasa flow class level 2-3,
Oh, good.
and that isn't where they should be if they're pregnant. Like there's no modification that makes that the right class for them.
I agree.
um,
I agree.
yeah,
And I just wonder if the studio itself ought not to have, posted somewhere, kind of a warning, if you will, or, an awareness, you
I
know.
did. I did speak to somebody on the
Mhm.
management side about that. And she said, well, we tell them, like when they come in, when they check in for class, we tell them that you understand this isn't recommended for pregnancy. And they just, I think by that point too, it's too late. They're there for class. They're like, oh, well, okay, I'll step out if that's what they say is like, I'll step out if I don't feel well.
Sure. Yeah.
But
I'll
they
step
don't,
out if I faint.
yeah. But they also don't understand they might feel okay, but they don't know how their baby is feeling.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. Wow.
yeah.
So with prenatal, we're going to just segue from, preconception fertility yoga to prenatal yoga. Are there any kinds of particular classes that you would say these are the ones you might want to seek out? Because bodies are starting to become very ligamentous, very pliable. I
Yes.
imagine injury, one could be setting oneself up for injury later in pregnancy if they're getting too loose in their pelvis, for instance, and
Mhm.
then baby grows and then all of a sudden they don't have the stability. So what would you be recommending for someone who's in their first trimester, for instance?
I would say if you have access to a prenatal yoga class, go.
Hmm.
It's never too early to start prenatal yoga. And myself, when I was pregnant, I went to early in my first trimester. I didn't have like the morning sickness and any of that, but I went from being very active to just like kind of knocked on my butt with
Hmm.
the energy
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
like wanting to sleep all the time. And I remember specifically with my first pregnancy, I kept thinking, well, I can't be this tired for 9 months. I'm never going to like that. I can't do this.
Right.
So I thought, let me go to a yoga class for the energy and the yoga. And I went to a prenatal class because I wanted to be safe. And the teacher told me, well, you're just in your first trimester. You can go to any class right now. And that was the prenatal teacher.
Oh,
and
goodness.
and now that I know more and being a teacher myself, yes. In the first trimester, yes, a student can go to other classes, but if they have access to the prenatal class, I always think this is great. This is the way you are moving. But for example, some studios might like that the prenatal class might not work all the time, or they only have like where I teach, it's only once a week.
I see.
So the
Gotcha. Hmm.
students want some
Hmm.
other classes.
Hmm.
And yes, they should go to that prenatal class and then they should look for a level one class, hatha or vinyasa if it's like I teach a level one vinyasa. So it's not one movement, one breath. It's
Hmm.
slower. I tell my prenatal students they can come to that class.
Hmm.
Um, you know, so
Iyengar, would Iyengar be one that you would?
Iyengar would be great.
I, I,
Yes.
I fed you that one because, of course,
Yeah.
and the
No,
reason
but
being for the listening and viewing audience, Iyengar has props and supports to make sure that you're in the correct pose for your body at this time and you're not going to be hyperextending and injuring yourself. And I'll invite you to say more about it because it's your expertise.
oh no, exactly right. And
Mhm.
the other thing about Iyengar is it's not a flow class. So
Right.
you're moving slowly, carefully, you're going into a
Mhm.
pose, you're coming out of a pose. It's a great time to explore that for pregnant. And I love taking Iyengar classes. I'm kind of a vinyasa, like that's what I teach and that's what I practice mostly. But I love taking Iyengar classes and I find it really supports my vinyasa practice later. Vinyasa, you're moving so fast a lot of the times that you really do need to, and I don't want to like misrepresent vinyasa. It's not power yoga. But it is flowy.
Mhm.
So it's beneficial to you to spend some time in an Iyengar class and really get the alignment and sort of spend some time refining the pose so that when you're in a flow class, you can hit it pretty quickly and you're not spending your time, your breath thinking like, well, where's my foot and all
Right,
of that.
right, right, right. Bobbling around. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So is it correct to say that taking the Iyengar class teaches you the precision of the pose so that when you're doing a more flow class, that precision already exists in your body. Your body already knows what it feels like to be in the pose correctly. So you're not sort
Yes.
of just throwing yourself around trying to mimic the teacher.
Yes, that's a great way of putting it.
Okay.
And that's why it's again great for prenatal,
Mhm.
anywhere along the fertility journey. It's great. It's great coming back postpartum. It's a great place to start. Again,
Mhm.
because you're moving slowly, coming in and out of poses, and
Mhm.
it's alignment focused.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's what I would tell you to look for the whole time. Fertility through pregnancy, through postpartum, those are the things you want to look for. And if you are, here's something interesting. I find this
Let's
interesting.
let's hear you.
You do not have to be a certified prenatal yoga teacher in order to teach prenatal yoga.
That was a question I was going to ask. So,
Yeah,
when is someone is taking a prenatal course, they are not necessarily getting someone with additional certification in
that's right.
what it means to be pregnant
That's
and
right.
what that might do to the body.
They
So,
really do need to look at the teacher's bio and
right.
see if that teacher is certified. And I would really, and that's not to say that there are no teachers that don't have the certification that aren't fully capable of handling the class. For
Mhm.
example, when I need a sub, I'm the only prenatal teacher at my studio.
Mhm. Mhm.
But when I need a sub, I know who to ask. I look for teacher trainers
Mhm.
with a wealth of experience, not only teaching yoga to students, but teaching teachers, training
Yes.
teachers.
Yes.
And they have the knowledge and they have the ability to quickly look at somebody and see what they need based
Mhm.
on just reading bodies.
Yeah.
They've just got so much experience doing that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I have a friend of mine who we were just talking about it, and she was like, you should do a workshop because she just teaches vinyasa like I do.
Mhm.
But a pregnant person came into her class, and she is not a prenatal certified teacher, but she has the YA uh, I'm blanking on the letters, but like she has the 500-hour
Okay.
certification. So she's not just fresh out of the 200-hour training. She has a
Mhm.
lot of experience. She's a very good teacher.
Mhm.
But she kind of confided to me that when this pregnant person walked in, she kind of was like, okay, you do your own thing. And she kind of just
Mhm.
focused on the rest of the class.
Mhm.
And I think that's very common. I was looking for a sub recently at Center for Yoga, and my go-to person wasn't available. So I
Mhm.
started asking around other teachers that I know are trainers that have experience, that have been teaching a long time. And you wouldn't believe how many of them said no, because they just didn't feel like ready for it.
Well,
Or
I mean, I admire them for knowing that. I'm sorry that it put you probably through a little extra work to find a sub,
yeah,
but if I'm always referring for for types of treatment that are not my niche because I want the person who needs some help to get the most expert person that's going to help them most quickly and efficiently. So, I'm in the fertility pregnancy lane, perimenopause. If someone's going to call for, I don't know, they tweaked their back. Sure, I can do it, but my colleague is an expert in musculoskeletal. So for this conversation and for listeners and viewers, do your due diligence to make sure you've got someone
the
who
right
is
teacher.
trained to support you in your fertility, pregnancy, and postpartum journey. Thank you for sharing in our conversation here at Health University. One of the ways in which we help people improve their fertility is through our 5-element fertility quiz. Please click on the link below at yourfertilityquiz.com and take this short quiz. You'll receive a free report that includes easy to implement ideas to improve your whole health and your fertile health. Now let's return to our topic in today's episode.
And it's interesting that you say this because I think a certain amount of that, like self-awareness of like not saying yes to everything and kind of knowing what you will do well kind of comes with a certain level of maybe age and experience.
Mhm.
Because there is a younger I met this younger teacher, and somebody had told me she was a prenatal teacher, and I was like, oh great, I need another sub. And then I asked her about it, and she was like, yeah, I can do it. I was wondering, can I come to your class and just get back into it a little, like refresh my, and I was like, oh no, no, no.
Right,
I
right.
was like, yes, you can come to my class, and until you do, I won't be asking you to
Mhm.
sub.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So one thing comes to my mind, and you can share this if you see it in your classrooms. Um, people who are trying to conceive may struggle with being surrounded by people who are pregnant. How can one manage that? What do you recommend for the listener or viewer who says, I'm all for preconception yoga, but I will suffer if I'm, trying to do my yoga next to someone who's, got the bump that I want to have.
Yeah. Well, that person doesn't need to put themselves in a prenatal class. They're either not pregnant yet or they're so early on they don't even know.
Hmm.
There's n- I'm not going to say, I don't like to speak in absolutes, so I'm not going to say there's nothing, but there's almost nothing that they can do in a yoga class that's going to damage their pregnancy. It's the same way doctors will say, like, women get so worried if they had a drink or something and they didn't know they were pregnant. And it's like, you didn't already damage your baby in the
Exactly.
first few weeks. But it's
Exactly.
it's really so unfortunate how much fear is like surrounding pregnancy. I think that's very specific to this country,
Hmm.
actually.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so that person doesn't need to put themselves in a prenatal class if the proximity is too much.
Hmm.
Again, they should look for an Iyengar class, a slower hatha class,
Yeah.
slower vinyasa class that's not going to be, maybe as challenging.
Mhm.
But also they're in a place where maybe they want to sweat, maybe they want to work up a sweat and like expel some of that frenetic energy that's building up,
Mhm.
and they're perfectly safe to do that at this time.
Hmm.
So
Provided that they've had enough experience, enough teaching. Please don't
yeah.
walk into a level two vinyasa
Oh,
because you need to work out some stress. You really.
nobody should be trying, hey, this is my first class ever and I'm going to the
Mhm.
level 2, 3, although it happens.
Of course it does. Of course
It
it
does.
does. Yeah, especially because that person is an athlete in some other form and presumes that they can just take this on as easily as they take on, tennis or whatever else they're doing. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's being human. And to circle back to the beginning of our conversation, that is an example of why yoga can be so helpful because when we try to get ahead of ourselves by trying to, be the result, how do I say this? Be the finished product when we're barely assembling the pieces.
Yeah.
That's the very personality, if you will, or ego structure that yoga is designed to help us breathe into, reflect upon, get some clarity, get some self-forgiveness or forgiveness for others so that we can really be a little bit more holistic in our
Yeah.
moment, in our breath.
Yeah, there's a plenty of all levels classes and I teach those sometimes too. And I use this as an opportunity to teach it. This is another thing that separates yoga from exercise is whereas in exercise, you're trying to do the same amount of reps as the teacher or the person next to you, or like whatever it is you're doing, you're trying to like do the thing.
Hmm.
Although there are some really incredible fitness instructors at my studio at Center for Yoga in Hollywood, in Larchmont in Los Angeles, that they are very intelligent about saying, look, it's not about the person next to you, and that's the yogic aspect. They all come from a yoga background there, and
Hmm.
that's the yogic aspect where it's about your breath and how you feel. And it's so I will say when I'm teaching a multi-level class, like, hey, if you're breathing in and out your mouth, if you're breathing fast, if you're moving fast, then you're maybe hyperventilating. Like you're
Hmm.
supposed to be moving with your breath,
Hmm.
and we're supposed to be slowing all of that down.
Yeah,
So
brilliant.
something to think about. Yeah.
Brilliant. And I think that that is a wonderful what's the word I'm trying to think of? At a macro level, or at a 30,000 foot level, we do need to slow down at this time in our lives when we're trying to conceive or when we're pregnant, because it is a particular time in life where doing more, harder, longer is kind of antithetical to getting us what we want, because the divine feminine, if you will, aspect
Yep.
of yoga, which is the divine feminine aspect of getting pregnant and being pregnant, really requires slowing down,
It does.
a deeper breath, a moment of reflection. So yeah,
And that's how you get that prana flowing, right?
mhm.
Yeah. You
And
can't,
that prana then flows right down to your ovaries and follicles and eggs within and the sperm, and creates that beautiful embryo that creates that then healthy pregnancy. Yeah.
yeah. Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, it is prana, chi, life force. Otherwise the physiology just doesn't even work if we don't have the life force. So the
Right.
beauty of this conversation and the real message that I'm hoping listeners and viewers come away with is the importance of having a yogic practice, whether it's yoga or not. I mean, it could be taking a walk in nature. It could be, I don't know, just walking your dog or something like that. But the
Yeah.
yogic practice of breath and reflection and having body and mind, spirit awareness is what's going to get you closer to your desire, your deepest desire.
Yeah. And there's a beautiful walking meditation that I learned on a yoga retreat, but it
Okay.
is kind of separate from like a yoga class.
Yeah, tell us about
And yeah, so you work with a mantra, and a mantra is just words that you can anchor your mind to. So a lot of times with meditation, people think, well, I have to stop my thoughts.
it.
And while that is a misconception that we're not going to spiral off into meditation, but
Mhm.
one way to like slow down the monkey mind, which is, oh my God, the grocery list and dinner and da 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 da, is to put other words in your mind. So if you have a mantra, or when I learned this practice the first time, the teacher gave us just a very simple mantra. It was just this. So with every step, we take a step, this, just this,
Mm.
just this. And I find myself walking my dog, and sometimes, like, yeah, if I just feel like my mind is everywhere but here, I'll just focus my gaze on my dog, and
Mhm.
two simple words like that. And it's amazing how 5 minutes of not thinking about your grocery list because you're repeating words in your head can be so soothing and grounding. And that is, a panavayu is the energetic, the downward energetic flow that we get when we do any kind of a grounding activity, whether it's sitting to meditate, whether it's some simple yoga that's again not getting our heart rate up too fast.
Mhm.
Um, all of these things get that apanavayu
Mhm.
flowing, and it doesn't when we're
Right.
doing this.
When we're on the gerbil wheel, so to speak.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
and we can be on the gerbil wheel sitting still. So because it
yeah.
is the mind that we want to really help. I don't want to say harness or control because that's an impossible task, but have a better relationship with. Let's put it that way.
That's a great way of putting it. I love that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that it's not running us and we're not trying to control it, but we're in a better, loving relationship with our mind so that everything can slow down, everything can get more life force, therefore better blood flow, therefore better hormonal communication and neurotransmitter communication and a preference for choosing to eat something that is high in nutrition versus a quick sugar burst or a quick
Yeah.
caffeine burst. So all of these things really do weave together quite I was going to say magically, but it's really quite matter of factly when we stop and take the time. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to make sure that before we wrap up, if there's any other tips, because I think that just this was a
Mm.
pearl. We
Yeah.
all, and because I know for myself, when I've heard mantras before, they've been in Sanskrit or something like that, and my Northern American mind doesn't quite know what to do with that. It doesn't feel like my language because it's not.
Of
But
course.
just this really kind of just anchors it.
Yeah, and I agree with that. So a lot of times we'll work with a Sanskrit mantra because it's not any one's language, but it's like the universal language of yoga. So we try to speak that same language. And
Mhm.
while I do think there's value in that, not if you don't know if your mantra is just sounds. I
Mhm.
mean, maybe, but to me, it's always been more powerful when I understand at least a loose translation
Mhm.
of the mantra.
Mhm.
And so, in addition to that, just this that I learned from my fabulous teacher, Cleo Manuelian, who would also be great if you were going into her class and on your fertility journey. She would take
Mhm.
great care of you.
Mhm.
Um, I talked a little bit about pranayama, and something I share with my students in prenatal yoga class is that, you know, when I was pregnant the first time, okay, my oldest daughter is 17. So I'll say like it's been a while since I've been pregnant. But my husband and I took a childbirth class at Cedars. And we learned the typical Lamaze style breath.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, great. But when push came to shove, when I was
Pun
when
intended.
it wasn't, but not when I was there in the hospital, and I didn't know. I remember I had a lot of fear around an epidural because the idea of a needle in my spine was so scary to me, even though it's meant to like ease pain. I was like, well, I don't know, like what could go wrong? It
And
seems
there
like a
and there
lot.
are things that can go wrong. So you were right in
Yeah.
for
So I remember having the birth plan that I didn't want to have any medication. I wanted to try. I wasn't like opposed to it, but I wanted to try. But
Mhm.
that first delivery, I ended up having to be induced, and I was really upset about that. And then when I first got to the hospital and they hooked me up to the fetal monitor, the nurse goes, "Oh, you're having contractions." I just didn't know because it was my first pregnancy and they weren't like feeling too bad. So
Mhm.
I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I'm having contractions. Well, can I just go home? Like I'll come back when they're close together." And they wouldn't let me leave the hospital because I'd already been checked in,
Mm.
and I didn't know to
Yeah.
stand up for myself and say I am leaving.
Yeah.
So pretty soon I had Pitocin, which intensified everything. And then pretty soon I was like, this is really bad. And
Mhm.
then they offered me a narcotic. And I didn't know that I could have not taken the narcotic because the epidural was only a few minutes later. But
Mhm.
like either they told me and I didn't hear because
Well, you
I'm
were
in
in
late.
labor for one, and
But
in a stressful, traumatic situation.
yeah, so there ended up being so much external stuff. And I just remember thinking when I was practically crying because they were giving me a narcotic, and that a narcotic has to, especially somebody who's not really tampered with drug use in my life, that has a negative connotation.
Mhm.
And so I was trying to not cry and using my Ujjayi breath. So I'm coming back to that pranayama. The Lamaze breath I learned in the breath, child prep class. This is a very fast breath. And this goes back to the kind of way you breathe when you're running or you're on a treadmill. It's a fast breath. And this to me accelerates the heart rate. It
It's a
is,
stress breath.
it's a stress, it's a fight or flight,
Mhm.
fight or,
Yep.
you know what I'm saying, fight or flight.
Mhm.
It's the fight breath.
Mhm.
And Ujjayi is all about it's a slow inhale and exhale through the nose, because when you breathe through the nose, you are slowing down your breath. And it's also when you breathe through your nose, that is the rest and reset stage. That, when we're running from a predator, yes, we're going to mouth breathe.
Mhm.
When we're telling ourselves that we're safe and it's time to deregulate the nervous system, it's slow breaths in and out through the nose. So my Ujjayi breath, I remember helped me not only settle down my emotions, my racing mind. It did help with the pain. But
Undoubtedly, yeah.
at this point, it wasn't helping to the point where I was like, I can do natural childbirth.
Mhm.
But but it got me to the point where when it was time for the epidural, and I had all this fear around this, and the doctor said, okay, you're going to exhale, put your arms around your husband and don't move. And in my head, I'm thinking, if I move, I'll be paralyzed. So,
Oh,
because
oh,
I didn't know.
yeah.
I just took that Ujjayi exhale, I closed my eyes and I went inside, and I didn't move a muscle. And
Mm.
my husband said that the doctor looked up at him and went, like, wow.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
that is my yoga practice that got me there.
yeah.
And then, just without talking too much longer, I had two completely separate pregnancies. That first one was induced. I got the narcotic, the epidural, blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah.
Mhm.
My second pregnancy, I was chasing around when it came to the time for delivery. It was a few days before my due date. And I was chasing my 4-year-old around the house.
Mhm.
And I ended up with an unplanned home birth because I was counting contractions and they weren't close together. And then suddenly, I don't know, it's somewhere around dinner time when I was taking care of my daughter,
Mhm.
suddenly they were close together and I missed it.
Wow.
But
Wow.
so that second one was completely aided by any
Yeah.
kind of medication.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely my ability to breathe through.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we practice in yoga. You
Mm-hmm.
breathe through the sensation and keep your mind from racing, because your mind is going to go, oh my God, this is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And your breath and your intention can override that.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. So back to the fertility journey, it can feel very stressful, anxiety provoking, out of control. Someone else is going to have to help me because my body is not doing what I want it to do. But that breath, that quieting, regardless of whether or not someone needs to help you, we all need help along the way,
Of
is
course.
it's going to change the entire experience. Then you carry that through to pregnancy, it's going to change the entire experience. Then you carry that through to postpartum, it's going to change the entire experience. Then for your entire family and future, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to change the world, literally. I mean, I almost get a little
Yeah.
teary. That
Yeah.
very simple act, viewers and listeners, know that you can change your world and the world. I know it might sound silly, but it's true.
It's very simple. Think about the energy we put out is the energy we get back. Think about if you're standing in line and someone turns around and says something mean and nasty to you versus if someone turns around and says like, hey, you're doing great today. Like
Mhm.
when you regulate yourself through a practice like yoga and breath, and then that energy gets put out and other people, and then we all absorb energy, right? That's why if we're around someone who's fighting, we kind of get tense and we're absorbing that energy. So
Mhm.
we need to, there, it sounds like a t-shirt, and I think I have a t-shirt that says something like this, but if we all can be the energy that we wish we were surrounded by,
Mhm.
we will start to create that.
Exactly.
And yeah,
Exactly. And then I will go so far as to say, if that person in front of you still turns around and says something mean, it's not going to penetrate because you have resourced yourself already with your practice, with your breathing practice, your yoga practice, your pranayama. So do it now because you're
yeah,
speaking to every cell of your body right now with how you are breathing and being and what you're allowing your mind to do. So
yeah,
get marry your mind, get into right relationship with your mind, get into right relationship with your breath, and you'll get into right relationship with your fertility, your pregnancy, your postpartum, your community, the future. So
yeah. And certainly you're on the fertility journey. This is what you need. You want to be the best. You want to show up as your best self for your child in all those moments that are going to be challenging
and there will
because your
be
toddler spilled something that you told them not to touch, or,
your
you
toddler
know,
to your teen to your 30-year-old.
oh, of course. Believe me, I have two teenage girls right now. I'd like,
And I have one 33-year-old. So I say with some authority. So
yeah.
anyway, I think this has been a fantastic conversation. I really hope and believe that it's going to be very useful to the people listening out here to just remember that you've got within you what you need to be addressing whatever life circumstance is squaring off with you right now.
Yeah.
And
And it's just connecting to that. It's in you. You just need to peel back some layers and find it.
yeah, yeah, and we believe in you. If you if you could hear that from our conversation, we believe in the practice, and we believe in your ability to do the practice, and we believe in you. So, with respect to your time and the listeners and viewers' time, we're going to wrap it up here. And I couldn't thank you so very more for this incredibly rich conversation. Thank you so much, Heather.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
Likewise, likewise. And so we wrap up all of our episodes at Health University with the motto, class dismissed. Until next time. Hey, thanks for joining us today here at Health University. If you want more episodes like this at Health University, you can find them wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you never miss an episode. If you have any thoughts or questions, please drop a comment down below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you at our next episode of Health University. But for now, class dismissed.